Hey, I'm Di McQueen, licensed clinical social worker, family and addiction expert. I'm here with Dr. Brian Jackson, my longtime cohort who specializes in the field of addiction. Welcome to Healing Families Shattered by Addiction.
Di and I have worked with addicts, alcoholics, and their families for over 30 years combined. Our podcast and coaching programs focus on families who have a loved one suffering from addiction. Our experience has been that this disease affects families as much, if not more, than the addict or alcoholic.
Is your world spinning out of control? Are you codependent? Are you experiencing worry, loss of sleep, and difficulty concentrating? If so, you're in the right place. Brian and I have both personally lived it, learned it, and now we're going to teach you tools and techniques on how to get your life back that you thought was shattered by addiction.
Okay, let's dive in.
Brian and I are so excited to introduce to you our new sponsor, Lakeview Health. They are a wonderful residential treatment center. Whether it's the family member who is looking for a place or the addict or alcoholic themselves, this would be the place that we would refer them to. Brian, you have many years of experience with Lakeview.
Yeah, Lakeview Health is a center of excellent addiction treatment. They take an evidence-based approach, medical approach to treating this complex brain disease. They hold the Joint Commission's Golden Seal, and they were voted one of America's best treatment centers by Newsweek magazine. They deliver dual diagnosis, gender-responsive, and trauma-informed care at their gorgeous facility here in Jacksonville, Florida. But they do see people from all over the world do come here to Jacksonville to go to treatment at Lakeview. Their levels of care include medically supervised detox, which a lot of people do need. Then they stabilize them in a residential rehabilitation and partial hospitalization program. They have board-certified physicians, master-level therapists, and they work to address the unique needs of each patient. So in other words, it's not a cookie-cutter program. They help individuals build skills for long-term sobriety. So if you or someone you know needs treatment, please visit their site at lakeviewhealth.com. We also have a hyperlink on our website at familyandaddictionexperts.com where you can just click and get some information about Lakeview Health. And Di, I think you have a number for people to call if they would like to inquire about treatment.
I sure do. That number is 888-480-3799. That's 888-480-3799. Give them a call. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. I'm Di McQueen, and I am joined today by my good friend and returning partner, Dr. Brian Jackson. Brian, it's nice to be back, even if it's via Zoom, with my good buddy. How you doing there, bud?
Good. I'm doing great, Di. How are you doing? It's good to be together. I think we've done a couple of podcasts on our own, and it's good to be back and together and talk about, the topic that we have for today.
Yeah, what is our topic for today, B? What are we going to do?
Well, I think it's important to talk about Al-Anon. I think a lot of family members who have sought help in the past or tried to figure out what to do because of where they are as a result of, a family member that has an addiction or a substance use disorder. And people will say, go to Al-Anon. And I think that it's important to describe what Al-Anon is and why it can be helpful. It's not for everybody, but we certainly recommend it as part of your team, even for the people that are working with us. And so Al-Anon is for friends and families of alcoholics. And then there's also Nar-Anon, which is more specific to people who have a drug issue, but very similar. And so I think it's very difficult to walk into Al-Anon, by yourself, and some things may sound foreign to you. So Di and I were talking, and we thought we would just give you a little bit of background on what it's like and different steps that they talk about, which, when you hear steps, that sounds foreign to you, but we're going to take you through that and see if we can't give you some clarity on what that's all about.
Absolutely. And, the one thing, baby, just to kind of clarify for people is, Al-Anon is one tool. It is not the only thing that Brian and I feel is important, but we do think it's important. And remember, the only requirement to be an Al-Anon or an R-Anon member is that you have a family member that has been affected or is affecting you, right, with their alcohol or drug use. That's the only requirement. And in some fashion, it could be, a parent, it could be a child, it could be a husband, a wife, a sister, a brother. So that's really all you have to remember, is that somehow this person is affecting you and you are not acting the same way that you used to act. And it is affecting you in a negative fashion. Obviously, most of us don't get affected in a positive fashion, but you're starting to act in a way that you go like, I don't even resemble myself anymore. And I'm out of control. And people will hear, every time you go to a meeting, you'll hear these things called the 12 steps. So Brian, I thought we'd take you through the 12 steps and what exactly are these 12 steps, and we'll break them down just very quickly for you. So Brian, we'll go through and we'll just read them back and forth first, and then I think we'll go ahead and kind of recap for you. Like, what does step 1 mean? What is it 2, 3, 4? So go ahead.
Yeah. So step number one is admit that you are powerless to the alcohol and that life is no longer manageable. So when you think about your life and the person who has the problem with the alcohol, how it's affected your life. And a lot of times you feel like life is unmanageable as a result of it. Di?
Exactly. I mean, that's the key right there, right? Finding that we have lost control of ourselves and our lives. And it's based on somebody else's actions. And that's when we go like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Right. Number 2, believe in a higher power that could restore you to sanity. We start realizing like I am becoming basically insane. And I'm obsessed with this person and what they're doing. And I need to turn this over to a power greater than myself. And I always thought, oh my gosh, they're talking about religion. And I'm like, no, they're really not. A higher power, someone other than me, because apparently my best thinking is getting me into this loop around and around and around. Right. So when I can do that, I can become sane again. That's all I need to know. B, number 3.
Yeah. So make the choice to turn your will and your life over to the higher power as you understand it. So again, Al-Anon is not dictating to you that you need to believe in God. It's not a religion. So it's a higher power of your understanding, which is, really cool, because everybody's belief system in terms of spirituality or a higher power is different. So again, just seeking help outside of yourself, looking for something greater than you that can help you cope with the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what we start to recognize early on in these recovery programs is we're talking about a mind, body, spirit connection, which is something Brian and I believe in strongly. And so this is where it all begins to start to make sense, right? That there is a mind, body, spirit connection. And what Al-Anon is really working on is really the spiritual side of things, right? Not religious, but spiritual. And we start to go, oh my gosh, there really is something out there inside of us that makes this connection begin to make sense to us. And I know for me, it was really my grounding force and started to all, begin to make some form of sense to me. And I know for you, Brian, I think that's where it all began for you as well, right? So you go,
Actually, yeah, absolutely. Mind, body, and spirit.
yeah. And I mean, I never understood the connection. And as we've worked our programs over the years, wow, I know how it affects when one part is affected, all parts are affected. And, you first have to come to that understanding of which one is being affected so that I can internalize and make sense of all 3. And when I can do that, I'm in harmony with myself and others. When I'm not, I'm back to step 1, going, I'm powerless over this and I'm insane again. So that it sounds very convoluted, but it's really not. It actually makes a lot of sense. And you'll see in time what we're talking about. But it all begins at the beginning. So step 4, right? It's make an inventory of ourselves, even the things that seem bad and wrong. none of us want to admit that we're part of the problem, and which means I have to see that first before I can become part of the solution. And one of the things I love that Al-Anon does is they have an entire book called The Blueprint for Progress that's dedicated to look at me and just, look at this whole facet of an inventory that I call, a fearless and moral inventory of myself. So there's this great book, and it's called The Blueprint for Progress. And it really, looks into my entire being. It breaks it down, and it asks questions about things like honesty and judgment of self and others. And the list goes on and on. Being aware of parts of me that I may never have looked at before. And it's not easy, if I'm being honest. And the other thing that I love about all of these workbooks and worksheets in all of these programs and all of the things that we work on as well is that you can do these things again and again and again. So as you get weller, I'm going to call it that, you also can see changes in yourself and how you go deeper or a different definition for these types of things. And it's fascinating. Through the years, I do these questions over and over again, and I see how I answer them much differently than the first time I answered them. And it's pretty fascinating. I don't know about you, B, but when I first did that, I was like, I am not sure I was actually being as honest as I could be. Not necessarily because I was trying to be dishonest, but because I really didn't know myself very well. And I was so caught up in what the other person was doing. So I was still trying to look at it through the lens of, how I was going to fix them rather than what's going on with me. What am I doing to be contributing to all of what's happening here? And when I became more responsible for, hey, my part in all of this, I realized I'm actually part of the problem and I want to be part of the solution.
Yeah, and I think when you first approach this, making this inventory of yourself, even the things that are bad and wrong, I think early on, we feel guilt, we feel shame, we wonder if we have something to do with it. Are we the cause of the drinking for the other person? And as Di said, as time goes by, you realize that you have character assets, because I think it's real easy to focus on, I guess, the defects, or Di and I like to say the things that you need to work on because you're in such a bad spot. So as time goes by, you'll realize that you're getting stronger and that you have assets and that you have tools that will help you cope with the situation.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think really the idea is that what we're trying to do is distinguish between the things and the actions that work in our lives and the things that are not working. And so the goal is to see the things that aren't working, that we can kind of figure out how do we either dispose of them or turn them in a different way that make them work better, or find out that they're not working at all and we kind of need to get rid of them. And so again, it's not a bad or good. Brian and I don't look at things as you're bad or good. We look at things as, hey, these aren't working for us anymore, so we need to kind of move them along, or how do we shift them in such a way that they become more productive for us? So they're not moral failings. They're more of, hey, they no longer serve us well, so we need to kind of release them. So that's it. Yeah. Step 4 is a biggie. It's a big one where you really have to take a big, hard look at self. And that's hard for most of us to do. We want to look at others. And it's much easier for us to be looking at everybody else than it is to be looking at ourselves. And I know for me, that was a big, huge step into my recovery world, which was to go like, wow, I have to look at me and get honest with me. It's so much easier for me to look at you and tell you all the things that you're doing right or wrong. Right. So
yeah,
anyway,
we want to try and stay away from taking an inventory of other people and
exactly.
take a look at ourselves, which leads us to step 5. And, after you've done this inventory, to admit to the higher power yourself and one other person the wrongs that you have done. And, I think that it's hard for us to ask for help. It's hard for most people to ask for help. But if you have one other person that you can be rigorously honest with in terms of sharing your inventory, and for females, we suggest you stay with females, and for males, we want you to stick with males. And it's almost like I don't want to say it's a cleansing step, if you will, because you finally have looked at it and you told somebody else about it. And now your burden, if you will, has been lightened by sharing this with somebody else. And 4 and 5 are just very, very important. Not that the rest of them aren't important as well. Step 6, Di?
Step 6 is to make yourself ready for a higher power to remove the shortcomings. So again, I don't like, and nor does Bry like the word shortcomings. We like to look at it as things that we would like to change about ourselves, or we no longer find as assets to our lives. So in other words, these are things that get in our way. So what we like to do is go like, yes, we need to look at those things and realize the things that do not serve us well. And it's time for us to go, hey, I think I'm ready to release these, and move on to things that are serving us better. And these are character, assets and things that we would no longer like. And, maybe one of them is, for instance, judging other people. I learned, like we were just talking about, if I stay in my own lane and I'm not looking at what's wrong with another person, but rather what's going on with myself, my life is a lot easier. I've figured out that I'm a full-time job, just trying to stay in my own side of the street. So therefore, that for me is something that's really important, right? I don't need to be looking at you. I need to be looking at me. And so that in and of itself became something that I would call a character strategy that I needed to work on back in the day, and sometimes today. I mean, we can all fall back into those things. So therefore, that's something that I go strongly needs to be worked on with me, judging other people and making sure that I am not being critical of another human being and looking at my own self. When I feel like I need to do that, I go, that's a strong indicator to me that I need to look at something within myself. And so it's an easy one to go, that's my list. And then I get to look at, number 7, which is?
Yeah. So, in 6, you're getting yourself ready to ask the higher power to remove your shortcomings. So 7 is the action step. And so that's when you ask your higher power to remove the issues with your character. And so now you've taken action and you want to be free of the burdens of these character, quote unquote, defects that you may have had that have stood in the way of your happiness, of you being your true authentic self. And now you hopefully are free of those things. And
right.
you
And
can
a big
focus
one
on,
for Al-Anoners, right, is the obsession of the mind.
correct,
And the other
correct,
person.
correct.
That's a big one, right? Where we're
Yeah, and being in
obsessed
Al-Anon
about
with other people, you don't feel alone. You hear other stories, and sometimes some of the stories are, um, make you feel like your problems maybe aren't as bad. And you don't want to compare yourself out, but you can listen for things that you can identify with. So, we encourage you when you're in the rooms of Al-Anon to look for the similarities instead of the differences, and try not to compare yourself out. Because there's always good messages at every meeting, if you just listen for the similarities, which leads us to step 8.
And step 8 is to make a list, and only a list, right, of those we had harmed and prepare to make an amends. So all you're doing at this step is to make a list of those we had harmed. And I encourage people always to go look up the word harmed, because that's a pretty intense word. So most people write down list and list and list and list and list. And I go, no, 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 no. When you go look up the word harmed, you'll find that it's a pretty short list. And it's much less than what you think you have done. So for me, that was an assignment that was given. And that's what I do with most of the people that I work with, is make them go look in the dictionary under the word harmed and see what it actually says, so that you realize you probably haven't harmed as many people as you think. But you write a list, and that's all you're doing at this point. It's just writing a list.
So now once you have your list in step 9, you make amends to these people as long as it does not hurt them to do so. And that includes yourself. So, for example, if you, I don't want this to sound too funny, but you robbed a 7-Eleven, you don't go knock on the door of the 7-Eleven and say, "Hey, it was me." But the lesson is just don't do that anymore. And when I made amends, there were three categories, and the point of the amends is not to have expectations that people are going to either accept your apology or forgive you. The point of this is for you to clear your plate of the things that you feel that you have harmed other people. I know when I made them, there were three categories. The first one was, hey, I want to apologize to you for anything I did that may have harmed you in any way. And they said, I don't know what you're talking about. And so it was in my mind, it wasn't in their mind. And then the second group, I made my amends and they said, "Oh, that's great. And I hope you're getting help and you're glad to hear that you're getting help and working on yourself." And then the third group said, "Please don't come around here anymore." But that was okay. You don't want to hear that. You want to hear people accept your apology. But again, the idea is for you to clear your plate, to clear up, anything that you may have bouncing around in your head that you feel like you've done harm. So you've done your part. You've made the apology with no expectations of the people on the other side, accepting it.
Yeah, one last thing about amends is remember that the word amends is not just to apologize, it means to make a change. So a real amends is I'm not just apologizing for an action, I'm showing them by making a change. So regardless if someone accepts or doesn't accept, my job is to make the changes necessary to show them that my actions are no longer just words. They are, I have made a change in myself. And for people, like, in other words, if I've been berating my alcoholic for all these years, my change is I'm not going to do that anymore. Regardless if they're drinking or not drinking or whatever, I'm making the change to not to do that anymore. That's my amends to that person. That's the change I'm making. What they do or don't do has nothing to do with me. My job is to be kind and loving to them, regardless. That's my amends. So continuing on, number 10 is to continue on this path and make a personal inventory and admit when you are wrong. That's a daily practice. So we try to do this on a daily basis, and there's, some action steps that you can do, and you'll learn in Al-Anon how to do that on a daily basis. So that's what we call, some people call maintenance steps, but it is a daily action so that you can quickly turn it around, right? So now you've gone through all this hard work to get you to where you kind of cleansed your soul and basically, got yourself on a good path. And so how by 10, 11, and 12, we're able to work through this in a very quick hurry to make sure that I don't have to have a whole nother, lifetime of having to work through all this stuff again. I have these action steps that I can do very quickly to make sure that I continue on my journey. And that's really helpful. So that step is, there's a lot more to it than just, hey, let me continue on my path. But working with a sponsor or with a counselor or listening in the rooms, you'll understand a lot more about step 10. I'm giving you the very abbreviated version of how to do that, but I think it's a very important step. It's one that I happen to like a lot and use on a very regular basis. I'd say almost daily. And it is an action step. It is one of those that is a regular and becomes something that is very important after you've done the first 9 steps.
Yeah, I prefer for it to be a daily inventory where you think about, hey, was I angry today? Did I lose my temper with somebody? And so you can go and make that amends pretty quickly. So I kind of think of it as just taking out a small bag of garbage as opposed to step 4 and 5, where you're looking at your entire life, which may be a dumpster of things that you need to correct and make amends for. So doing this on a daily basis really keeps yourself accountable in terms of your behavior on a daily basis. So, and keeps yourself in check.
I love that. I love the analogy. So, in other words, you're taking out a little bag of garbage versus the 30-yard roll off. I love it. I love it. It's true. It's true. Yeah, it's very helpful.
All right. So then 11, again, Di was talking about these as maintenance steps. So 10, 11, and 12, we haven't gotten to 12 or even 11. So on 11, seek to improve your contact with the higher power through meditation and prayer. And again, this is not a religious program. So when you think about a higher power, it's whatever the higher power is for you, however you define it. And so seeking spirituality is basically through the meditation and or prayer. And it's very calming. And I think that seeking spirituality and having a spiritual awareness is really the hinge that upon which, peace of mind swings. So you want to fill that void now that used to be filled with worry and concern about your loved one who was, in the throes of their addiction.
Yes, and lastly, once we are in the practice of, working our steps, and especially, getting mindful that I can stay calm, I can be whatever I need to be on a daily basis. Number 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening, and that's not, we're singing praises of or whatever. Because of these steps, I spread the message of Al-Anon. It basically just says when I see another person hurting and in so much pain, I can tell them, you know what helped me? I went to Al-Anon. I go see my counselor. I do these daily practices that help me stay sane and comfortable and help me understand the disease of addiction. And there are tools and techniques that I can do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. And you too can be free of this horrible, hold that it has on you if you too want to try it. Does it work for everybody? Can't say it does, can't say it doesn't. But I do know that if you choose to go ahead and do some of these practices, it in fact will help. If you leave yourself an open mind. They talk about the how, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. It definitely does work if you apply the principles of these steps. And how do we know that? Because millions and millions and millions of people have found relief. So we have to give it an opportunity, but that's with an open mind, right? So this basically was a little rundown of the 12 steps, the best way to find out how it will work for you. My suggestion, try an Al-Anon meeting and probably 6 or 7 or 10, maybe 12.
Yeah, and as you were saying, there's nothing more rewarding than, you having worked through the program and have spent some time in Al-Anon when another person may come to you and say, "Hey, how did you do it? How are you coping with the fact that your husband is alcoholic, yet you seem to be so balanced and grounded and taking care of yourself?" And, you can't give it away unless you have it. And it's a program of attraction rather than promotion. A lot of times I want to go shout it from the rooftops, like, "Hey, here's the solution," but you don't want to push it on anybody. But you will be surprised that as you work through this program, that you will be able to be of help and help somebody help themselves as they go through this journey of trying to cope in a healthy way with this disease that affects the entire family.
Absolutely. And that's one tool, one of many, right? Another would be come see us, come talk to us about what you might need. We are family and addiction experts. We are available by Brian.
Yeah, I mean, you can contact us with an email or question at info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. You can also listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. There's probably a few more, but I can't remember them all. Also on our website, which is familyandaddictionexperts.com. I think you might have to put in the www, but so that would be www.familyandaddictions.com. We have a family survival kit that you can click on there, and there's PDF files. This is at no charge to you that you can print out some of these ideas and some of these thoughts that we have or other people have regarding how family members can survive during this period of time.
Absolutely. We'd love to talk to you. We always do offer a free consultation if there's something you'd like to try to see if we might be able to help you with or not. So we're available as well. I'm Di McQueen. This is Dr. Brian Jackson, and we are family and addiction experts. And this podcast is Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. Thanks again, and we'll see you the next time. All right.
Thanks, Di. I appreciate it. Thank you. All righty. Bye.
Thanks so much for joining our podcast, Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with more important tools, techniques, and ways for you to focus on you instead of the alcoholic or addict in your world.
Until then, please go to our website, familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's familyandaddictionexperts.com. You'll also see links to our Facebook and Instagram pages. Please also, if you have any emails that you would like to send us, that's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. With any thoughts, feelings, questions that you may have for us, we would love to hear from you, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.